I might see you then.
Good. I hope so, Mary.
Yeah, it's a powder day.
Yeah, right. All right. Thanks.
Exclamation mark.
Okay, are we ready?
Yep.
So just take a few moments to ground yourself. And good morning, Dale.
Morning.
Hello, Kyra.
Nancy.
Muted.
Carol and Dee, Judy, Susie, Rick. Hi, everybody.
Morning.
Hi.
Liz, Lydia, Charlene. If I missed you, I still see you, but I'm going to change my screen so I can't see you.
Hi.
All right. Thanks for being here. Kathy. Okay.
You have to mute us.
Take you all to mute. Okay, so just take a few moments to ground yourself. Feel your feet on the floor and do your daily check-in about where the weight is on your feet. Just notice, are you balanced? Is it centered? Is it even right to left? And if it's not, that's why you're here. That's part of the work that we're doing, is to balance the right and left side of your body and the front and the back of your body, and make sure that your hips are working like they're supposed to and that the muscles of your back are holding you up. So relax your belly, feel your feet, and just take a couple deep breaths. Full breath in, fully exhale it out. And again, in and out. And then let's go right to working on our shoulders like a hinge. So fold your hands into your palms, bringing your arms up to your temples and thumbs pointing down. Make your elbows come all the way together so they touch and all the way back. 25 of those. Mike, you might need a, Mike. You might need a roller on his pants. McCoy needs a roller on his pants. Okay. Keep going. So muscles of the shoulder blades squeezing in toward your spine and then all the way apart off your back, letting your upper back have that little bit of rounding. The rhomboids get to work as you pull your shoulder blades together. The serratus gets to work, the muscle out here on the side as you bring your elbows together. And that glides the shoulder blade. Excellent. Then into shoulder shrugs. So now we're going to lift the shoulder blades up and press them down, working on that aspect of the shoulder. Just if there's any compensation happening, one shoulder's higher than the other, we're asking them to work together If you have a little bit of imbalance in your upper back or maybe a touch of scoliosis, this could also help just center the spine a little better. Lift and lower. Lift and lower. Muscles move bones, and so if a bone is a little bit out of place, it's usually a muscle that put it there. So being able to access these muscles on the right and left side of our bodies that balance the two sides, excellent. Now take it into a shoulder roll, up and forward and around. Squeeze onto your back, relax your belly. Allow your whole spine to move in response to what your shoulder blades are doing. So sometimes we do this holding stability, but right now I just want you to relax your belly. And as your upper back opens up, let that change into the middle back, into the low back, maybe into the position of your pelvis. Kind of like when we have you walk with your hands behind your head and we see that temporary upper back change and how that changes your ability to walk better or load your hip better, especially for those of you that are going skiing today. It's really important to have both hips being able to be loaded. Up and back and around, I switch directions. And forward once again, 10 more, up and forward and around, big roll. Soft belly, squeezing all the way onto your back, getting both shoulder blades to hug toward your spine, up and forward and around. Squeeze and up and forward and around. And then back up and back and around. Feeling that, maybe move all the way down your whole spine into the top of your sacrum. Nice. Into arm circles, fold your fingers to your palms, bring your arms out to the side, parallel to the floor, hug your shoulder blades back, relax your belly, letting your whole upper back extend, and circle forward, 40 circles. If you have one shoulder that is pushed farther away from your spine, it may affect a hip. It may be a compensation from a hip, but we can go after it both ways. Being able to hug those shoulder blades onto your back and relax your belly helps you load both hips more evenly, triggers your psoas to be able to come online, that muscle that goes from your lumbar spine all the way and connects into the inner thighs. Palms up, bring your arms up, hug in, and circle backwards. And release. Excellent. Now just squeeze and release your shoulder blades. Pinch them together on your back and release. Squeeze, release. Again, shoulders hugging toward your spine, bottom edge of that shoulder coming together. And again, maybe we get a change, not just in the shoulder, but into that middle back, that place often for a lot of us that doesn't move so well. Squeeze, release, squeeze, release. And then shifting out of working on any thoracic compensation And I'm going to have you actually sit in a chair today or something. So take a minute to go ahead and go do that. Go grab a chair and have a seat and bring your block and your strap close. All the way in. There we go. All right, most people look ready. Are you ready for that? So now go ahead and grab your block and place it between your knees. And then roll an arch into your low back. So feel the bowl of your pelvis and roll forward of your sit bones so that you're extending your low back a lot. We're going to work on these extensors. And I want you to just relax your shoulders, relax everything else. And then holding that extension in your pelvis, so that requires psoas and other hip muscles that pull this arch into your low back. Relaxing your shoulders, and then squeeze and release in on that block with the adductors. Hug in, release, hug in, release. And see if you can get the muscles in the creases of your hips to work. Notice if you're sitting evenly on your chair. And in an ideal world, you would get like really deep in those creases to turn on. And you may feel some muscle activation also into your back, right at the top of your sacrum. And then roll back, let your back kind of round, and then roll back into it again, coming forward, finding those hip muscles, putting that arch into your back, relaxing your shoulders completely, and then squeeze again. Squeeze and release, about 20. Hug in, release. And if we're doing this well, you may feel it all the way up into your middle back. Now, you can even close your eyes and feel, are you actually getting both hips to engage in that arched position, both hip flexors, pulling you in. Some people want to extend just at their back, and they kind of do this with with just their back muscles without these powerful hip muscles that roll you forward. And we really need those powerful hip muscles to be able to do this action when we ask it to. So we could take out a hip disparity by doing this. We could open up your middle back. We could let your head come back into good position. And release out of that. And then one more time, roll that big arch and let that just move from your hips, both hips. Feel both hips engaging as you squeeze in on that. Creases of the hips, inside adductors, helping to assist in hip flexion. Squeeze that block and relax everything in your shoulders. Relax your belly. And again, maybe you feel it in your back. Hopefully you feel it evenly in your back. And come back to neutral. Excellent. go ahead and grab your strap. We're going to do the same thing. Put your strap around your knees and tighten it down. So we're, again, finding your hip flexors by using both the adductors that pull you closer to your body and the abductors. And if you had a hip that turned a little bit in a different direction, or maybe you noticed you're still heavier on one side than the other, even in this sitting position, then hopefully this will even that out a little more. So again, roll your hips forward. So find right at the creases of your hips and see if you can feel your sit bones on your seat, and then roll forward to the front of your sit bones so that you're really engaging your hips, and then relax your belly and relax your shoulders. And then pull out against that strap, and about fist width is good. So mine's even a touch wide, right in front of those ASIS bones. Holding that arch in your back and then pulling out against that strap and releasing. Pull out and release. And we want to feel, again, those creases of the hips rolling you forward and then relaxing everything. And maybe you can even feel it up between your shoulder blades into your middle back as we get that demand up the back to change. Pull out, hold, release, keeping the muscles in the front really working. And then roll back. And as you roll back, you could even go behind your sit bones and like squeeze your butt muscles like you're crushing a walnut. So when we have an uneven pelvis, flexion, this is flexion, or extension, either one of them doesn't happen very easily. And we want both directions to work, and both directions work well when we have femur bones that line up into your pelvis and a pelvis that works into your back. So do that one more time. Go into round, squeeze your butt cheeks like you're crushing a walnut. Go over, feel your belly muscles engage, go into that flexion, and then go all the way forward again to the front of your sit bones, putting that arch in your back and just relaxing through your arms and your upper back and your head and neck, and pull out once again, press and release out on that strap. And is it even? Can you pull out evenly with both sides? Okay, one more time. Roll back. Squeeze your butt cheeks. Go all the way back to the back of your sit bones. Squeeze it like you're crushing a walnut. Let your back go into that rounding. This is like sitting cats and dogs, kind of. Even here, push your shoulder blades off your back. Go into that big flex position. Find the muscles on the side that actually pull your shoulders forward so that your back can go more round, and then come back to neutral, past neutral, into that arch, and pull out. And then once again, finding those big front hip muscles, pulling it into that arch, relaxing everything else. Relax your belly, relax between your shoulder blades, press and release. Find those hip muscles. Make sure that you're rolling all the way to the front. As much crease in the hips as you can, as much arch in the back as you've got. And release your strap. And then one more time, tuck your tailbone, squeeze your butt cheeks, and round. Excellent. Come back to neutral. Just to neutral, sitting tall, bring your right leg over your left. So we're asking, this is especially good for those of us whose legs or knees go in a little bit. We want to ask for external femur rotation in that hip joint, sitting tall. So neutral pelvis, open up that leg and just gently use the muscles on the outside of this hip. Those are your external rotators to press that knee down toward the floor. Open that up. Flexing your foot back. Find your breath. Stay with your breath. And release. Switch sides. Notice the difference between one side and the other. See if you can find muscles deep in your hip. Open that space. And release out of it. Go ahead and come out of the chair and just move that chair or bench to the side, or come onto your mat and keep your block and your strap close to you. So we did that first bit of hip work in hip flexion. That's a lot of demand on your pelvis. And now I want you to come down to hook lying. So now we have less demand on your pelvis. Your pelvis gets to be neutral or even tip slightly backwards. And let your arms just be down. And now we get a more gentle thoracic extension. So we're still getting some opening in our upper back and shoulders. So just let your arms relax out like that. And then go ahead and grab your block again. So now this is not so closed, this hip position. It's a little more open, but I want to go after those same muscles that help reposition the leg bone in the hip socket. So relax your shoulders. Check that your nose and your sternum and your belly button are all in good alignment. And then squeeze and release your block again, making sure we have really good hip activation today. And maybe a little bit of an unlocking of the pelvis this way. If one side of your pelvis is held anterior and one posterior. If your hip disparity looks like that, or even if you have one hip that's higher than the other, then the difference in the angle of where your pelvis and your hip bones come together exists. So just letting the floor hold your pelvis stable and then working your adductors makes it so that that angle that might be bigger on one side and smaller on the other comes out. So this, what we're doing today, hopefully reduces any hip disparity or difference between one side and the other that you might have going on. Keep squeezing, feel it. Feel if both adductors are working. So again, if you have one hip that's high and one hip that's low, maybe your left side is high, then that adductor is contracted a little bit more than the right side. So maybe that side activates more quickly, and the right side that's more open, it has a harder time squeezing in to find this new angle that we're asking between the pelvis and the leg bones. Go up on your toes and back on your heels. Relax your stomach and let the work at your lower leg align your foot, shin, knee, and hip as you do this rocking chair. Up and back. Up and back. This is like retraining foot strikes. So for those of you that have feet that are everted, that go out a little bit like a duck, we know that those gait muscles then are hip muscle, usually into knee going into the inside, over pronating on your foot instead of the heel ball toe and then being able to come to toe off and have the feet come up. So we're just retraining that activity of foot strike, heel ball toe. Gait muscles in the lower leg. Gait muscles in the lower leg help the knee work, help the ankle work, and help the hip work. And then go ahead and rest your feet again, rest your whole body, let your shoulders relax, let your belly relax. Go back to your squeezes, squeeze and release. And once again, try to find those adductors, adding to your body. And really notice, are you getting both side adductors working? Hug in, release. Changing the angle between the pelvis and the leg bone. Okay, now let's hold that. Keep a constant pressure in on that pillow or block, and then interlace your fingers. We'll go after any thoracic compensation again. So shoulders relaxing down to the floor, pulling all the way over above your head, thumbs touching the floor, elbows stay super strong and straight, and then back up. Keep the squeeze at your knees so that the adductors stay engaged. That's holding the stability in your pelvis as we ask for increasing thoracic extension, letting it move through your whole upper back and back up again. Keep going. Let's do these. Let's do 20 of these. And then let your arms relax down on the floor. And then I want you to glide your arms like you're making a snow angel up. So still squeezing at your knees, hugging that in, continuing to help reduce any hip disparity that might exist, and then gliding the arms down and up. The shoulder blade has to rotate a little bit, but it's being held pretty stable. Maybe there's some pulling on the pec or anything that's tight in the front. And if this is painful, you could just let your arms be here and breathe instead of doing the movement if that's uncomfortable for your shoulders for any reason. Keep squeezing in on that block. I know those adductors are probably getting tired. That's okay. Okay, now I'm gonna have you borrow a little bit from Pilates, and I want you to keep that squeeze in at your adductors, knees hugging the pillow, and go ahead and take your back more flat to the floor. So we're going into that flexion, and then go ahead and pick your head up. So slowly come up and just go to the top of the edge of your shoulder blades, reaching your arms all the way away. So your abdominals are doing some work here. And then I want you to even squeeze the glutes down at your tailbone to get that flexion to happen. Maybe some opening of the erectors if there's a difference between the two sides of your back, and release. What I want you to try to avoid is too much hip activity. So we did a lot of hip flexor movement on the chair. Right now I want to keep this open and not have big hip flexor activation. So adductors get to squeeze, then lift shoulders up off the floor, abdominal activation, get to the tips of your shoulder blades, and then roll back down. And again, even at your pelvis, if it feels okay to you, you could squeeze your glutes like you're crushing walnuts and come up again. And maybe that helps to take some of the imbalance out of your back muscles if you have a little bit of scoliosis or a little bit of imbalance that way. Again, exhale, coming up, squeezing your glutes like you're crushing a walnut, squeezing the abdominals, coming up to the top tips of your shoulder blades, maybe even a tiny bit more. Feel those abs really work, and come back down into flexion. And you may feel like your back is getting flatter to the floor here. That's okay. All the way up and rolling down. Go ahead and set your pillow away and grab your strap. And then strap, once again, fist width apart. And just notice as you come back down to this position, what's your back doing? And what's your pelvis doing? Are you even on both sides of your pelvis yet? Or even here, do you still feel a little heavier on one side? The goal, hopefully, as we get any bone imbalance or things in your skeleton to shift, to be able to have even hips and even shoulders as you're lying here on the floor. So once again, hip bones, sternum, everything lined up, shoulder blades relaxing, and then go ahead and press out against your strap. Press, find your abductors, and release. Press, release. Keep going. Let's do 20 or so. You may feel some shaking happen at your knees as your pelvis is trying to readjust to that position. Once again, the floor is holding your pelvis stable. So as we ask the abductors to work, there's no movement in the pelvis, and maybe we get a little bit of adjustment in the femur, or maybe you do get a little adjustment at the sit bone or sacrum. Release, press, hold, release, press, hold, release. Keep going nice and slow. Press, really feel what's happening. As you hold that pressure out against the strap, what's happening at your pelvis? What's happening at your shoulders? Are you getting things to change? Press, hold, release. Is it even on both sides? And then up on your toes, back on your heels, with that pressure out against your strap. Now we get the outer hip to kick in. Again, working on your gait muscles. You may notice things happening in your back, like different muscles are activating as you go up on your toes and back on your heels, that automatically we have some change up the back, maybe a little more thoracic extension. Maybe you feel like, oh, my shoulders want to tuck underneath me a little more. Different muscles are working all the way up that chain. Excellent. Now, once again, hold out on that. And then find the muscles at the base of your pelvis once again. Go ahead and let your back go more flat and do that little crunch. So reaching your arms, head coming up, reaching your arms away from you, and then take it up to the top of your shoulder blades. And you can go ahead and crush a walnut at your seat right now, letting your outer hip muscles tuck under, going into flexion, coming up a little bit, hold it, feel your abdominals, and then roll it down. And let your pelvis come back to neutral. Then go ahead and go more flat in your low back, pinch your sit bones together or squeeze the walnut, crush the walnut, find your butt muscles, and then go ahead and crunch. Feel if you can roll one vertebrae at a time up your back, and then one vertebrae at a time coming back down. Do a couple more of these. Lift, pulling out against the strap, using your glutes, and coming down. And again, lift, squeeze, and come on down. Come back to neutral. One last set of presses. Neutral pelvis, just relaxing. Shoulder blades relaxing down, and then just press straight out and release. Press and release. And take your strap off. We're going to work one side at a time going into that flexion. So taking your foot into the strap, putting it at the ball of your foot to start, then lowering the leg, letting the leg be right in line with the hip, and at first just go into that calf stretch. So when we work one side versus the other, we're asking for the body to do different things between one side and the other. So the pelvis on the left side where your knee is bent is just pretty much neutral. And we're asking for this kinetic chain between your ankle, your knee, and your hip. And as we transition into moving that strap towards your heel, keeping the legs super straight as you can, and bringing it up, we're asking for this side to drop backwards into a more of a posterior position. And that change is going to change once again up your whole back, into your shoulder, into your head and neck. Maybe works one side of your back differently if you have that imbalance in your back. Go ahead and switch sides. Putting the strap first at the ball of your foot, aligning your foot, lower leg, knee, and hip. And then move the strap to your heel and take that up a little higher. Keeping your thigh tight, let muscles around your knee, let those really be active. And now we're asking for this kind of unilateral hip position here, starting to happen. One hip neutral to a little bit of extension, and this other hip going into flexion. Keeping that knee really straight, thigh tight. And release. Set your strap down, and then just go ahead and roll into some pelvic tilts for me. So tuck your tailbone, even squeeze your glutes a little bit, let your back go all the way into flexion, and then arch your back into extension, rolling back and forth. And then just come to neutral and just feel your weight once again. Hopefully, if you even felt heavier one side and the other lying down, that has come to a more even position now, that there's like a grounded weight to both hips. Go ahead and come onto your belly. Let your feet pigeon toe and your body just relax out, and then stretch both arms up above your head. Let your forehead come down. And with that, reach the shoulder blade again has to move. It has to glide forward and change its angle. So see if you can just imagine that the shoulder blade is coming around you a little bit. And then just rotate those upper arm bones outwards and hold that. And then move your arms out to the corner of your mat. And same thing, feel that shoulder blade having to come around, and then the arm bone rotates in the socket so that it's both a hinge and a rotation. And then hold that outward rotation and breathe. Feel the breath move into your belly, into your rib cage, east to west direction. Big, full breaths. And then straight out from your shoulders. And then rotate those upper arm bones backward. You could be in the golfer's grip here, fingers curled into palms. And then because the floor is just holding your rib cage, see if you can expand your breath into the back body a little more. Big, full breaths. And release. Press up onto your hands and knees and round and arch your back. All the way into round. Even here, a tuck of your tailbone, maybe even a little squeeze of your glutes. Pressing all the way off your shoulders and coming down. Letting the spine come into extension, the pelvis rolling over the top of the thigh bones, and shoulder blades can squeeze in towards your middle back, and all the extensors of your neck can start to work, open that space. And then round again, flexors, belly muscles. And extend. And just like you could feel those front hip muscles when we did the sitting in the chair, see if you could even feel like you're holding that pillow between your knees and you're pulling your pelvis forward. Even here, rolling forward in your hips so that you find those big hip muscles in the front, and then come out of that into rounding. Shoulder blades move off your back, belly muscles active, flex the spine, and then extend, pulling the pelvis over the top of the thigh bones and squeezing into your middle back. And then tuck your toes under and press up into a plank position. And go all the way to that same knee tight position. Feel your thigh muscles here. And you can balance that with a little glute squeeze, a mini pinch of the walnut glute contraction, so that you feel both hips turn on. Maybe the outer hips get to turn on here, pressing back through your heels. And then find the middle between shoulders off your back. You could even do that a couple times. That takes a lot of strength. Find the middle place between where your shoulders collapse and you're pushing all the way off your back. Where's the middle where your shoulder blades can just be right on top of your rib cage? And release. And maybe just press back into a child's pose. You can go feet together, knees together. And let your arms come back. And breathe. And then come up to seated. You're going to hold your pelvis really stable. Take your legs out wide. And then with this stable pelvic position, hold your legs stable and let this space right here, the quadratus lumborum and the lateral flexion of your spine happen. So one arm just going in front of a leg and opening that space. You can look up toward the sky, letting your ear come down to one shoulder, and breathe as that space opens. Pelvis stable, legs strong. Inhale, come up. Switch to the other side. Open the space between the rib and the hip. Inhale, come up one more time. Thighs tight, feet flexing, legs super active. And coming up, second side. Excellent. And come all the way up to standing. Merrick went with tree pose today. We're going to go with a standing quad stretch. You're totally fine to hold the wall or use it as a balance, but standing, reaching back, grabbing your foot with one or both hands, or hooking it up onto a chair, and then lengthening your tailbone down toward the floor to open up the front of that hip. second side. And release. Up onto your toes 10 times. And then feet out. And feel that whole hip have to rotate out. Notice if you have, like, squeeze your butt a little bit. See if you have an even squeeze in your glutes. Sometimes one leg bone needs a little help to come all the way around. So fire up your glutes, squeeze your glutes. Hold that for a moment. Just see if you've got both glutes super active, and then go ahead and relax your glutes and come up onto your toes. And then pigeon toe. Bring the weight to the inside of your feet. These are these glute medius and minimus. These outer hip muscles actually do that rotation. Just stand there for a moment. Just, again, let that, see if that hip can rotate. Bring the weight to the inside of your feet. Also, your adductors are rotators of this leg to the inside. So just hang out there for a moment. Relax your stomach. Let that move up to your shoulders, all the way through your spine as your pelvis adjusts to this internal rotation of the leg bone. Oh, there we go. I feel mine's coming around a little more. Relax your belly again. Your pelvis drops a little forward to allow for that internal rotation to happen. That might change all the way up into your shoulders and then up onto your toes. Nice. Back to straight. Last ones. Awesome. Okay, just feel that and feel if that feels more even. Feel if you maybe notice some muscles up into your middle back that keep your shoulder blades back a little bit, just all by themselves on their own. As we change your posture and take out little disparities or differences between one side and the other, hopefully that's what we're doing. Go ahead and come into your lying down position, whatever you would like. Oh, it's 8:30. If you have to leave, I totally understand. If you still have 5 minutes, then stay with me. See if you can just drop in for 1 minute or for the next few minutes. Let the story of who you are to just fade into the background and allow yourself to be present in this moment, to shift more into the place of the I am, the consciousness, the open space that you are. Feel your breath. Be with the sensations. And just observe what's arising, and then notice who the observer is. See if you can point to the one that knows. If you experience observing the thought, see if you can point to the observer. The moment that you notice you're lost in thought, see if you can come back to the place where you can feel the space between the thoughts. Notice the space between the breaths. And if you notice that you've drifted into thought, just come back. Come back to the sensations that exist here in this moment. And just for this last moment, just be the consciousness with which everything is arising. We always have a choice to come back or to notice that this space is always existing. If you feel caught up in the worry or the fear, just take a moment to shift out of sort of the small self into this bigger, expansive place that we always have access to. if we just allow. Go ahead and take some deep breaths and begin to bring yourself around. And if you would like to check in, please do so.